Xenoblade Chronicles is quite possibly the biggest JRPG ever made, with a world comparable in size to sandboxes like Skyrim. The opening area alone is over a square kilometer in size, and the map is riddled with secret nooks and crannies. Areas keep getting bigger the higher you climb on Bionis too. Gara Plains on the Bionis leg is twice as large as the area around Colony 9, and Aerith Sea, which we're looking at now, fills over 5 square miles, all of it visible from any location. You can walk around on almost anything you can see, including the massive whose glowing red eyes overlook every area. The world can feel a little on the empty side compared to Western RPGs, since most quest givers are back in town and most quests are fairly simple, but the unique areas are so fun to simply traverse that it takes a lot of the edge off. Xenoblade's immense world is remarkably fleshed out too, or shandified as Mr. B-Tongue might say if he still made things. Monolith Soft has clearly taken time to think about little details like where its inhabitants sleep and what they eat, though they have left a few important questions open. Questions like, if the rest of the universe is an endless ocean, then how is there a sun and where does it go at night? Xenoblade's graphics engine is amazingly well optimized for showing off its mind-blowing vistas, from rolling fields of grass beneath impossibly rocky overhangs to a metal valley set in the blood groove of an immense sword. Every area shows you something new and wonderful, rendered with tons of detailed models that push the Wii to its limit, and look pretty great in 1080p on Dolphin too. The textures are a little fuzzy and the downscaled ones used for the 3DS version are exponentially worse, but to complain about that would be to miss the phosphorescent marsh for the glowing trees. Obviously, in any game like this, the environments are going to steal the show, but it's worth noting just how detailed Xenoblade's character models are as well. Though the textures on the various characters are a little fuzzy, the tech used to animate them is pretty spectacular, so long as you ignore the jumping physics, and you get a good sense of each character from their movements alone. Every playable character has a fully customizable outfit that changes with each new piece of equipment you put on, another aspect the game borrows from MMOs. It's really cool to see your sweet gear choices reflected directly on your party, and varied gem slots and special effects mean your armor really is a choice. You rarely have objectively optimal equipment based on raw numbers. Speaking of numbers, you're liable to see some pretty big ones if you wander too far off the beaten path. In every area, including the sunny beaches around Colony 9, there are apex predators with levels that will dwarf yours when you first encounter them. In order to defeat these foes, you need to grind up like crazy or invent a winning strategy, and when you do finally take one of the behemoths down, it's a feeling of accomplishment like no other. There's also a feeling of terror that descends when harsh danger music starts playing and you realize you've accidentally stumbled into the T-Rex scene from Jurassic Park. It's especially satisfying to take down the unique monsters that roam certain areas of the map. These mini-bosses often present fun, unique challenges when you face them at or below their level, and they reward you with sick loot should you manage to overcome them. If you're the sort to enjoy MMO raids, you'll have a hell of a good time tackling the 5 level 100 plus super bosses that are hidden throughout the world. Most main bosses don't put up quite as much of a fight, in fact they're mostly pushovers if you spend any substantial amount of time grinding or questing, but the excellent story makes each fight satisfying regardless. All of Xenoblade's villains have a great presence, hammy and cackling to the point of being entertaining without losing their threatening edge. Metalface is a right bastard who delights in the suffering he causes and is thus very easy to hate, but his sadistic glee is nonetheless more than a little infectious, and his connection to Dunban in his former life as Mumkar makes him more than just a memorable enforcer. The Mechon leader Eggle is a much more sympathetic villain when the reasons behind his actions become clear, and his final redemption is very moving. Xenoblade is smart in that it knows you need a good antagonist to keep this kind of story going, so that redemption comes on the heels of Dixon, who has been a staunch ally from the very start of the game, betraying the party to the true villain, Zanza. Zanza is the god of Xenoblade's world, and he's a true egomaniac as you'd expect of any villain in that position, but Xenoblade Chronicles plays things a little differently from other RPGs that employ the same trope. Zanza is a self-made and self-righteous god, and far from the most powerful being in the universe. Challenger Approaching wrote a fantastic piece about the game's Gnostic roots, and it's well worth a read, link in the doobly-doo. The important takeaway from it is that Xenoblade is all about questioning the role of God in the universe, and whether a creator has any right to impose on the lives of his creation. It's interesting, challenging subject matter to tackle, but at this point we should expect nothing less of Tetsuya Takahashi, just like we shouldn't expect him to ever make a game without Xeno in the title. Xenogears and its prequel series Xenosaga are heavily entrenched in the philosophies of Nietzsche, Freud, and Jung, all of whom happen to be influenced by Gnostic teachings. Takahashi's works wouldn't be half the games they are without those thematic underpinnings, but they have their flaws. The philosophy can be more than a little heavy-handed, and Xenoblade aims to fix those issues. Its philosophical themes are still strong, but they're woven more subtly into the plot, and on the whole the game has a less dour tone. It doesn't hit you over the head with deep, edgy pontifications on the meaning of life, but that material is still there if you want to think about it, and digging into it really enriches your play experience. But it is ancillary to what makes the story works. Strip away the philosophical undertones and you have a script brimming with heart. The main characters have a very down-to-earth air about them, like they really are normal people caught up in an extraordinary adventure, and the struggles they go through, no matter how minor, have a tangible emotional impact. This is one of the few games out there that's brought me to tears. I should probably stop doing so many things like that in a row, and not thanks to some big earth-shaking moment of high drama. It was one of the quiet moments, a heart-to-heart, where it became clear how deep and powerful the friendships forged between Shulk and his party members really are. Don't get me wrong though, the big moments hit hard too. In cutscenes, Xenoblade's sharp writing is brought to life with top-tier animation and strong voice acting. Originally dubbed by Nintendo of Europe, Xenoblade's cast features a ton of British talent that we almost never get to hear in North American releases. I mean, I love the stable of voice actors that works with Funimation, XSeed, Atlas, and Sentai Filmworks, but after a while they start to sound overly familiar, and Xenoblade's cast marks a nice change of pace. Out of everyone, Timothy Watson steals the show as Metalface.
Now, let's all calm down. If I slip, I might mess up her hair.
But the whole cast clearly had a lot of fun with their roles, and they have the range to nail the over-the-top action scenes, the comedy, and the moments of quiet drama. Of course, their performances are given a lot of additional weight by the game's incredible, and I do mean incredible, soundtrack. Xenoblade Chronicles music covers a broad array of genres, from soothing lullabies to impatient marches to intense hard rock battle themes. And it was put together by an equally diverse team of composers. There's Yoko Shimomura, the genius behind Radiant Historia, Super Mario RPG, Kingdom Hearts, and pretty much every great Square Enix track that wasn't helmed by Uematsu. Manami Kiyota, a relative newcomer who cut her teeth on arrangements of Final Fantasy songs, and Ace Plus, a trio comprised of Hiroyo Yamanaka, Kenji Hiramatsu, and Tamori Kudo, who collaboratively have worked on a number of anime and MMO soundtracks. Each composer leaves their own distinctive stamp on the fields and cutscenes for which they're responsible. Shimomura was tasked with setting the stage for the game, and as such handled the prologue and epilogue, the field music for Colony 9, and the main battle theme. Her songs have a notable air of nostalgia to them. The more intense tracks feel epic in a way that harkens back to classic Final Fantasy, while the songs for Shulk's hometown and his relationship with Fiora call to mind long summers and old romance. If any of these talented composers could be called the weak link in Xenoblade's music team, it's probably Kyoto. Her compositions are generally more subdued and cinematic, and are largely split between soft and somber background music and eerie, slightly atonal tracks that underscore scenes with greater tension. I don't mean to imply that these tracks are bad, they're by and large very effective and well put together, it's just that they seem a little generic next to the standout work of Shimomura and Ace Plus. Kyoto's great at making cinematic background music, as in tracks that don't overshadow the on-screen action, and it works well in cutscenes, but her field music kind of suffers for it. Her tracks are well suited to their respective areas, and they come alive a little in their nighttime variants, but you'll forget them within a few seconds of leaving each area, while tracks from other composers tend to stick in your head. There are a few notable exceptions. I'm very fond of Frontier Village and Alchemoth Imperial Capital at any time of day, Colony 6 Hope and Hidden Machina Village. Actually, she seems to excel at doing tracks for settlements. It's as though her imagination really gets going when she's trying to capture the flavor of a culture. The music from Ace Plus tends to be more dynamic and bombastic, and thus their tracks are among the most memorable in the game. Where Kyoto and Shimomura use largely classical orchestrations for their tracks, Ace Plus mixes in distinctly ethnic instruments, synthesizer chords, and electric guitar riffs, and tends to use even traditional instruments in unconventional ways. The resulting songs are each individually powerful and memorable, and elevate Xenoblade's soundtrack from being merely great to being one of the best in gaming history. Their intense anthems lend battles against unique monsters and story bosses a proper level of grandiosity. When Shulk has a vision and takes control of his destiny, the corresponding music really makes you feel the power, and when the chips are down, the high-tempo danger track puts sweat on your brow. Good as they are at making your heart race, Ace Plus is equally skilled at warming it with more subtle, emotional tracks, not to mention lightening it with offbeat comedic numbers. It's their field tracks that really steal the show, though, instilling in you a growing lust for adventure with each note that plays. The standout is, of course, Gower Plain, which serves not just as the best song in the game, but as the linchpin of what might be the single most breathtaking establishing shot in this entire medium. The night versions of all these songs are just as good, and the differences in arrangement are so immense that it's like, well, night and day. Though he's not part of the main soundtrack, Yasunori Mitsuda, who composed for Xenogears and Xenosaga, as well as Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, and a bunch of other games that routinely make best soundtrack lists, wrote the game's ending theme, Beyond the Sky. There's not really much I can say about it other than it's great. It's a moving, soulful piece that makes for a perfect accompaniment to the game's beautiful epilogue. With the flute and the singer's voice pitch, it's sort of like Xenoblade's version of My Heart Will Go On, only not shit. Now that I've held you hostage for over 20 minutes and forced my opinion on you at gunpoint, I think we can all agree that Xenoblade Chronicles is a truly phenomenal game, or else. But one question remains: which version is the best? The Wii version has a lot going for it, and following GameStop's influx of used copies, it's once again fallen to a reasonable price point. It's far and away the best use you'll ever get out of your Wii, and I say that as someone who genuinely loves the system and its games. The Wii's processing power deftly outshines the new 3DS, allowing marginally better render distances for enemies and environmental details, superior frame rates when the action gets heavy, and drastically improved texture resolution. Playing at 480p on a Wii U or with the Wii's component cables makes the world seem sharper and more alive. I can't be sure, but I think the difference in processing power affects the AI as well. Both party members and enemies seem to be slower to respond on 3DS. The original also benefits from having the D-pad on the Wii remote rather than next to the analog stick, which means that you can cycle through arts and battle while still running around. Without that, battles on the 3DS feel noticeably stiffer and slower, though you get the same results playing with the classic controller on the Wii. On the other hand, with the game on a 3DS cartridge, load times are exponentially shorter, making fast travel more enjoyable and allowing for tighter editing in certain cutscenes without obnoxious half-second pauses on black screens. The 3D effect is a little underutilized, though most areas are so large that I imagine conveying a proper sense of depth without breaking people's eyes would be difficult, but when it works well. The ability to save at any point is obviously a boon to both versions, but it's especially convenient in a portable game, and slipping your 3DS into sleep mode makes it much easier to pick up and play whenever you have a free moment. In general, I think JRPGs benefit greatly from being on handhelds, and this is a perfect game to play while lounging in bed or on a lunch break or even taking a long commute. The new 3DS version also has a few nominal extras that allow you to listen to the game's soundtrack and view character models, but to someone with the Xenoblade soundtrack on his phone, that's kind of a meaningless addition. Both galleries just exist as a way to shoehorn Street Pass and Amiibo functionality into the game. It's a tough call between the two versions, but ultimately I think the new 3DS does have the edge in terms of convenience. Unfortunate D-pad placement makes the controls feel a bit more awkward than they ought to be, and it's not nearly as pretty, but for an 80-plus hour game, portability is a nigh insurmountable advantage. If you have the time to sit at home and play on a console, or better yet in 1080p with instant load times on a Dolphin emulator, then by all means do. It's really a matter of preference. It would be great if you could do both. Xenoblade 3D would have really benefited from cross-save functionality with the Wii version, but unfortunately Nintendo is too far behind the times to ever let that happen. Regardless of how you play it, Xenoblade Chronicles is capable of giving you some of the best hours of your life. It really is that amazing. Deep in both mechanics and narrative and presented with incomparable flair, it blows almost every other RPG and Wii game on the market out of the water. I really appreciate you guys sticking it out for this review, not to mention the wait to actually make it. I'd love to know what you think, so please leave a comment telling me about the review or Xenoblade Chronicles or whatever else you want to talk about. And if you enjoyed the video, I would really appreciate it if you'd subscribe and give me a thumbs up. Next week I'll be covering Until Dawn, which earns itself a silver medal. If you want to know why, you'll have to tune in. But in the meantime, you can check out one of my other videos, like my Attack on Titan breakdown, which... Jeff, can you help me carry this body? Fucking